Very gentle.
Welcome to Books We've Never Read.
Except for those we have.
I'm Jason,
I'm Nicole.
and welcome to the last episode of The Three Body Problem. Today we're covering chapters, I think it's 25 through 35. It's definitely chapters
25 through the end of book one.
If you have not watched the other episodes yet, we suggest that you go back and do those before you watch this one. There's a syllabus episode for this book. It's in the playlist for this series of videos. Start there so you can see the chapters that we're reading per episode if you want to follow along. Otherwise, we're done with this book as of today, so read at your own pace and then you can watch these and catch up.
Yeah. Make sure if you have anything to add to the discussion, please add it in the comments below. It's very exciting to see what everybody has to say about everything, and lots of really good insight and things we hadn't thought about. There was a good one that I read right before we started filming today. So
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Because we are done with this episode, and the only thing we know about our viewers right now is that they like this series, we're going to go ahead and jump straight into the second book of this series. So sometime in the next week or so, we are going to put out just another brief syllabus episode outlining which chapters we're going to read and in what order. But we probably won't do any background work necessarily because all the information about the author and the series is kind of in the first syllabus episode.
I might have a little something to share.
Okay, well, whatever. We'll do that. Let's go ahead and get started.
I dropped his book.
I didn't need it.
Okay, so this was absolutely my favorite part of this book. This book felt like a true prequel. Like, usually when we get a prequel, it's the other things have been written or are already a movie, and then they've gone back and done the backstory. This feels proper. It was done in its proper order.
Mm-hmm.
This should properly be a prequel, and it should exist so that way we know like how we get to this point.
Right. The main drama is all ahead, right?
Yeah.
There's this invasion coming, all this stuff is happening,
Yeah.
but we got so much background about why and how. Yeah, I agree. I definitely
So
agree.
I love though that I had the opportunity to read something actually in order.
Mm-hmm.
That makes me very happy.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
Man, there's just so much stuff. There's also so much stuff in this part of the book that I can't wait to see visually
Mm-hmm.
whenever this becomes a Netflix, Tennyson, all the things that y'all are describing that I still don't know anything about. We need to do some research on that.
One of the things I like most about this chapter or these chapters was that we've talked a lot about like these opposites, right, as we're going through, right, the nature, but also like the revolution and the cutting down the forest and all that, and there was so much of that, and there's so much juxtaposition, and I really liked all that.
Even a juxtaposition to Ye's character. There's even like a foil to her character, a parallel that we get to learn about.
Yeah.
So much stuff. Let's go.
Let's go. Well, I think we'll just start at the beginning and work our way through.
Yeah.
Makes sense? Okay, cool. So one of like the biggest things I think that happens in the first chapter of our reading was Ye kills her husband because it's convenient.
Because he's just also attached to the same
rope.
line as the guy that has to go. But that shows what she was resigned to, like, this thing's going to happen and it's going to work and nothing's going to stand in its way. And if my husband has to go, well,
Right.
that brings up the question again, what happened to Yangdong, her daughter?
Mm-hmm.
Did she die by suicide? Was this a sacrifice?
Sure.
In that her husband was a sacrifice for this cause?
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to learn any more information about that? Because we don't hear.
Right. The book's over, and we don't know anything else about Yangdong.
So is this even going to be relevant in the next book, or is this?
Maybe not. Maybe not.
I'm just never going to know.
But I thought that was a very powerful part, right? Like, just kind of, we talked a little bit last week about how far she's willing to go, and like how selfish it is. And she's willing to sacrifice just like whoever and whatever to make this thing happen. And the other guy on the rope is the problem.
Right.
But like,
But
I
he's
may never get
attached.
another chance, so here we go.
This was the only
It's
chance.
crazy. I mean, like, it's not the only chance. You don't know that. You're just saying that to yourself. Right? I mean, like she just
But
says
she must
that.
have believed that.
Right, she
Yeah.
just says that to herself. But there's no way she could have possibly known that this was the only chance. It was just the first
It
chance.
was just a chance.
It's just that chance.
I did kind of think about as I read this part of the book, what you said last time about this being, you know, the single most selfish decision that could be made. And I'm still just thinking about how Three Body Problem is an allegory. And I don't even know that we can call it an allegory because it's so clearly just like governments do these things, because we had this whole part at the beginning of the novel about the revolution and all that stuff. But I still, that it keeps playing in my mind that, you know, Ye feeling like she had the right to make this choice for everyone. Well, governments do that all the time, you know.
Yeah, but like theoretically, governments are elected or picked or something, right? Like she chose
Well,
this.
ours is.
Well, sure. I mean, like not all of them, but like theoretically, the way it should be done, right? She's just like deciding on her own in secret, and like, granted, I'm sure that happens at a governmental level, right? But there's no oversight here, right? There's no like balance of power. There's no collaboration.
Yeah.
And it's not even like she thought about it. She's hanging out, finds out that there's aliens, and within like 15 minutes, she's like, I'm done with this place.
Just
burn it down.
Do it.
Right? Like she didn't go home and be like, oh, let me like really consider this.
Yeah.
It was a whim, you know.
But she, just given what she went through, you know, her trauma is ingrained in her, and just how horrible humanity is. And we saw that whole build up
Sure.
to her absolutely
Yeah,
becoming
I'm
convinced.
not disputing like her reasoning.
Yeah.
I just think it's no bueno,
It's
right?
just selfish.
Yeah.
I made a note that this was a very polite interrogation.
Oh, for sure. Be like, you can stop anytime you like. Do you want some water? Are you okay? I can't remember if it's in this one or in another one, but at some point, it was, I think, in the last interrogation chapter. He says, okay, we're going to pick up with the interrogation. Is that okay? And she says, I think you know everything I know. And then she dumps on them, like, oh, by the way, there's Sophons out there. Like, how would we know that? I just thought it was kind of ridiculous
Yeah.
that she said that. So.
The Sophons! Okay, we'll get to it.
We'll get to it.
Okay.
Kind of moving on to like the next chapter, maybe.
Yeah.
But like, because it's tying in with all this, her sacrificing. So you know, she's like given up on humanity. She sacrifices her husband, and then you have this really touching chapter where she like gets to meet these school kids, and they're like the Cultural Revolution is coming to an end, and they're all get to go to college, and the locals take her and Yongdong in and take care of them, and she has this like really naive conversation about stars with this
that
lady,
they're not gonna fall.
and it's like it's so beautiful, and like hope is coming back. It's a new springtime, right?
Yeah.
But winter is coming. You know, like we just found out that aliens are on their way and they're going to murder everybody, and there's so much hope here, and like that was one of those juxtapositions I really enjoyed.
I thought it was really strange how eager she was to teach the neighborhood children.
Because who cares? It's all done.
Well, and now that we know all that we know in this part of the book, you know, our science should not be able to progress past a certain point because of
Right.
what all's happened. And so,
Right.
but why was she so excited about teaching these kids? Interesting. We learned in 26 that Shaolin, her mother, is still alive. I, for some reason, thought that she had died at the beginning, and is remarried. And they had this great like reunion until the husband was like,
Let's not talk about your dad. This is what your mom
and
wants.
like it never even came up.
Yeah.
It's like, back off, dude.
Well, and then so I mean, so you have like this hope, and what I would think of, I can't remember if they actually say it, but it's almost like there should be a thawing to when she's like meeting all the villagers and doing all that stuff, right? There should be a thawing of her like sentiment about this thing because
Right.
it's maybe the first time in her life that she's seen something that's like beautiful and hopeful.
Yeah.
And then she goes and talks to her mom, and that like makes her mad.
Mm-hmm.
And then she decides, I'm going to go talk to the Red Guard girls,
Ugh.
which was really a powerful scene. And then
Yeah.
it literally says, this solidified her ideal.
She's like, I don't regret anything.
Not at all.
Now, for symbolism, I did find interesting that 3 of the 4 girls were there.
Mhm.
One must have, one drowned in
One
the river.
drowned, saving a sheep.
So, you know, when you have like women in threes, what does that bring up in your mind? What's a famous
Like the Norns, like the past, present, and future.
Okay,
like
so there's
the
the
young,
past.
the old. Yeah.
past, present, and future? There's ethos, pathos, logos.
Mhm.
There's also the three fates.
That's what I meant. The Norns
Yeah.
and the Fates, they're the same thing. Yeah.
And so I was kind of making some notes about, you know, who's who of those, and first of all, the nerve. I don't know, the nerve of Ye to be like, I just thought we should get together.
So you can apologize for this one terrible thing out of probably the hundreds of terrible things that they did.
And how interesting that they remembered that particular incident. I thought
Yeah.
that was just interesting. She did not want revenge because she had already dispensed that. That
Right.
was a line in the book, but she wanted repentance and she wanted to see their humanity.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because she has destroyed humanity.
Yeah. Well, and then the girls have this conversation where they, or the young women now or whatever, where they say, well, what about us?
Yeah, who will
Who will-
repent?
And you know what's
Yeah.
interesting to me is this is a conversation I have every day. Like, well, what about me? What about all the bad things that have happened to me?
Yeah.
Well, what about you? And the bad things that you have happened to you don't atone for the bad things you have done.
Right.
Just like for Ye.
Yeah.
The bad things that have happened to you don't atone for
This
you deciding
thing
that you're
that
going
you
to
have done.
destroy the human race.
You're right.
And you know,
But-
it's almost, it's like a holier than thou kind of thing that she's doing, but she is no better, and it is arguably significantly worse.
Because the damage is.
Yeah. And you know
Way
what's even worse is that like these girls beat that man to death, and that's not cool. But they were there, like they did it, and the repercussions of Ye like beating humanity to death, she will never have to see.
Hmm.
It's not real to her because she'll be dead forever, for 400 years before these people show up. You know.
Well, the book is getting real, actual, proper sci-fi in this section. Maybe we can extend her life.
Yeah, maybe so, and that's fine. She should have to. She should have to be there. So.
But yeah, that who will repent to us. You know, you saw things in our last reading as cycles, and the cycle of abuse, the cycle
Right.
of.
Well, and it's what humanity is, right? Like when we're seeing this all from. I thought a lot this time about how there are some characters that are important that I feel like I have never met, even though I've heard them speak, because I've only met them through like Ye's retelling of things. And so yeah, we see these cycles because I think Ye sees these cycles. You know, like she is caught, or if she doesn't see it, she is the cycle, right? She is caught up in it. So.
Well, speaking of people that we learned through her,
Evans. That is
here's
specifically.
Mike Evans.
Yeah. I specifically don't feel like I've ever met him.
Yeah.
I feel like he's a character who comes and goes, and even though we get to see him on his old mountainside caring about birds, that is almost the only time we ever see him. And I don't feel like I met him. I feel like instead a character told me that this character exists.
Right, which is what happened.
What happened?
Was effective storytelling on Shinley's part.
Mm-hmm.
Him rebuilding the forest, saving the birds. I was like, is he our Noah?
Nope. and you know, right here from the very beginning when he says, you know, why should we only care about things when they're human? Why can't I care about saving the birds and also be a hero? And then that just kind of flows into this whole thing. Well, like, I'm just going to save aliens.
Yeah.
Right? Then I'm a hero.
Easy transition.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was in distress. You know, that point where he's like, tell me what to do next.
Yeah.
It's
I
like,
mean,
boy,
it
had too
definitely
much
makes sense.
money.
But on top of that, right? Like, we've talked a couple times about how some people just like hear these things and they're just like, I will base my life off of this. Evans runs into some random lady. She says, like, hey, by the way, there's aliens. They need a new home. And he goes off for like the next 6 years building Red Coast 2. And what if somebody like walked into my office one day and was like, there's aliens? I'd be like, I'm going to change nothing about my life and I'm going to go home.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, Tom DeLonge has been telling us for years, you know, and like we're just like, okay,
It doesn't
Tom.
bother me.
Yeah, they're over there.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But that's crazy that he just went all in, and he went more. He did 120%.
No,
I
granted,
mean,
he already went all in, like with the birds, right? Like that's his character.
yeah.
But he like didn't do any digging. He was just like, deal.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. Crazy.
He did call that forest. He said, I could return this to Eden. And I was just like, there is something with the forest.
There's the forest.
But he forms the ETO, Their goal is to eliminate human tyranny. And I just think it's so shallow, that motto. Because not only are you eliminating human tyranny, but you are eliminating all of humanity. And
Right.
most of it is not tyrannous.
Well, so I'm just going to skip like a little bit. We'll come back because I don't want to go too far. But one of the notes I took was when they're talking about the difference between the Adventists and the Redemptionists. Somewhere in that conversation, they actually say, we don't know what extraterrestrial civilization is like, but we know humanity.
Yes. I
It's
thought of it when I
unredeemable.
read that.
It's so terrible. Doesn't matter what they're like.
Mhm.
It's got to be better. That's dumb. That's real dumb. Because odds are they're at least as bad as we are. Like
Yeah.
that just seems pretty standard, right?
Well, and when we get to the part when we see things from
Yeah.
the Trisolarans' point of view, they're very aware of that.
Yeah.
That we're all just as bad as each other.
Yeah.
And we also learned with this explanation of the Redemptionists and the Adventists that there's the third group, the survivors. And
Yeah, that was like
there's
a weird
an explanation
thing.
that, you know, the Redemptionists were more religious, or one of
The
the groups
Redemptionists are religious.
are the religious ones.
The Adventists want just like
are just more like,
annihilation.
we'll also be part of it. They're hoping, the
Adventists want annihilation.
Oh, the
Redemptionists-
Redemptionists think that there will be like hope that they can coexist a little bit.
Yeah, but like they will be the new overlords.
Gotcha.
And then the survivalists want to like help so that like a couple of them can like make it out and live on the moon or something. Yeah, like whatever. So, but I mean, I don't want to get like too far into that because we are skipping the chapter because there's a second Evans chapter where she goes to the new Red Coast 2.
Yeah.
You know, like his boat or whatever. This is where we learned that we have a timeline. We got 450 years from this point until Trisolarans show up.
The text made a reference to the fact that like she wasn't bothered by this, like she wasn't surprised by it. She shouldn't be surprised by it because she understands the math.
Sure, yeah.
So I was just like, why would they even say that? Anyway.
But so this brings me back to a conversation I think we had 2 weeks ago where Evans says that he hopes that the world can once again become harmonious, prosperous, and sinless.
Oh.
It never was.
It never
was. And it's this like Rousseauian idea, right? That there's this like state of innocence, it's this Garden of Eden concept. And oh man, I can't remember the name of the book now. I'm reading a book by David Graeber, A New History of Humanity or something like that. But it's talking about this Rousseauian concept, like this noble savage idea that once we were perfect and now we are fallen. But that is not true.
Yeah.
And so he thinks that by bringing in these aliens, we can return it to this state of bliss and peace, but that's not a real place.
But that is a real idea. You know, and
Sure.
like throughout humanity we've had this belief, you know, that at one time things were perfect. Do we just have a hard time accepting our own like horribleness?
Maybe. I think it's important that we have that concept as like a future thing, right? Like if you wanted to say we can have an Eden in the future, I think that's important, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, do I think we'll really get there? Like, no.
We
But
should
striving for it is
Yeah.
important. But I think there's like real harm that we have actually done in the world because we think that we had it and we lost it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not, like we do dumb stuff to try to like get it back.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of like moving forward, we're trying to move backward, but there's nowhere to like land. There's nowhere to go back to. And I really hung up on that part, that we could return it. And like, it's just such a bizarre concept to me.
Mhm.
So.
But I mean, it just shows there's anytime like a religion is built out of stuff, there is just this, there's mental gymnastics and there's this ideology, and then you kind of craft the system, you know, to follow the path you want it to go, and make up the belief. It's something to fight for.
It's also like they don't really discuss this like in the Red Guard chapters and all that, but there was this concept in communism of that era that we can like return to this place, right? Like, and so like it's again some of that, I think. And it's clearly what Evans was trying to do in his forest with his birds, right? It was like restore it to where it was once. So it's all very
Is chapter 32 the next one, or did I skip a bunch of stuff?
We got a couple more things. Let's see. We talked about the Adventists and the survivors. We find out that the Adventists on Red Coast 2 have been intercepting messages that even Ye does not necessarily know what's in them.
Yeah.
And so Mike Evans has been hoarding all this information, and he knows a lot more than anybody else knows about the invasion. We also find out in this chapter that, so the interrogator says, well, so they'll be here in 450 years. And Ye tells him, well, they've already sent 2 hydrogen particles here. And he's like, so who cares, right? Like, what about the hydrogen particles? And she says something about, like, the microdimensions, right? We haven't got to the Sophon part yet, but, like, what about if there's these microdimensions? And how these 2 hydrogen molecules are sealing off the progress of science. And this is the first mention that we really get of that. And we also get the plan to cut the boat in half.
Yes!
It's pretty wild.
That's so interesting.
I first off, Dasha, right? Coming up with his plan. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed his like taking the cigar out of the guy's mouth, like the CIA guy, and he like chops it all up and does all this stuff. And at the end, the CIA guy's like, "Here, have the whole box, man. It's good." That was a classic Dasha moment, right?
Yeah,
like, definitely our
so
favorite
good.
character, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, he's quite a guy.
And then there's this conversation. Well, what about like innocent people? And again, we have this thing. We're just like.
Best not to think of that.
Yeah, don't think about that one. And but we have the hatching of the plan. I don't think at this point quite yet they've chopped the boat up.
It comes
but it's pretty
apart
quick.
in 31.
In 31.
But that was a very long chapter with lots of like dots, and then do you know what I'm talking about? Like breaks.
They also have like one of the most terrifying scenes so far, where there's the guy like scrubbing the boat, and he gets cut in half, and he tries to crawl out of the blood pool, but he has no hands. And I was like.
Such a, and I don't mean graphic in like a bloody moment, but I also mean it in terms of a bloody moment. But like, what a graphic moment for our Netflix show.
Well, and so then I thought about this. Here we are, approaching the end of 2022, and if I told you there are microfiber filaments out there that will slice you in half, and you saw people walking around town who just randomly would like walk through a doorway and get sliced in half, you would be terrified.
Yes.
But if I told you there's a virus that is going to make you sick and it could kill you.
And if you just walk around downtown.
And if you just walk around downtown, it might kill you. And then you saw people die. Nah.
I was also scared of that.
But like, how? There's something in our brains where if we saw people getting cut in half, we'd be like, no. But like when people get sick and die, that's not real.
It's not us. It's not.
So
not really happening.
Very interesting. But I just kind of thought about that.
That is interesting. Okay, are these filament things? Is that real? Does that exist?
No, not that is. I mean, they kind of equated to spider webs. Clearly, spider webs aren't that strong, right?
Right.
But spider webs are probably, as best as I know, the closest thing that we have. But I mean, like, you could make something that is that small.
Yeah.
The question is, could you really make something that's that strong?
Right.
And it's highly unlikely. They didn't intend for the materials to be used like this, right? This is, I think, early on in the conversation, they talked about how they were going to use them for like a space elevator or something about space. That was the reason that they were doing the research. It just so happens that
it would work for this.
This is the size they can make it.
Ship came apart like a deck of cards.
Like a deck of cards. Yeah, I thought that was really cool.
Man. Yeah. That and the noise, like
I can hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, the literary aspect of that part of the chapter was brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
You slow down when you read it because you don't want to miss a single noise, the sound of a wrench. No, many wrenches. Like as the gears got split and like hit each other.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, it reminded me of the Titanic. You watch that movie when. That's what this is going to be. It's going to be so epic.
So after the boat gets cut, we go back to Trisolaris, and we get the whole listening post 1379.
Yeah.
And I actually did some math here.
Okay.
I was sitting here at work, like in my office, and I did some math because there's this conversation with the listener where he says that everything is apparently measured in hours.
Yeah.
On Triceloris, right?
How exhausting.
And so they say that he makes a mention that he is X hours old, X trisolaran hours old, which doesn't really mean anything to us, right? Like we don't know what an hour is like.
But we know how many hours it took for the message.
Well, so we know that, and in the following chapter, at the beginning of chapter 33, it says something about hours, and then it says Earth years. And so I went back and did the math, and this trisolaran guy is like he's 60 years old. So he's like trisolaran, or he would be 60 to us, right?
The way they reproduce, or the way their descendants are formed, I guess it's not really reproduction, but whatever. Very interesting. The kids inherit some of the memories from the parents.
Which is probably important if your civilization is getting nuked on repeat.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was cool.
How cool. Or we learned all kinds of cool stuff.
Well, so he is Ye Wenxie, except
he's trying to save.
He's trying to save the other world.
Yeah.
And so there's again these parallels,
Yes.
right? And what's actually really interesting is he doesn't. Later on, he kind of makes like a Mike Evans argument. He says, "Well, I'm a hero because I'm saving humanity," right? But that's not the argument that he makes to himself at first. Do you remember what he first says? He says, "I'm not going to tell anybody about this because if they know I found this message, we won't need as many listening posts.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
I may not have a job.
I have a job.
So I just won't tell anyway." That's what he says.
Yeah.
And as a government worker, that happens. Right? Like, I'll tell you, that kind of thing happens. So I just thought that was really funny.
I hate that his punishment, though, when he got caught.
Yeah.
The punishment's very harsh, but he said, "You'll live long enough to see Ye Wenxie lose hope."
Yeah.
I wonder if we'll see that.
We'll see. It's also in this chapter. I made a note that like this is a chapter or two after they say we know humanity, we don't know anything about Trisolaris, but they must be better. And Trisolaris sounds terrible. Like it sounds incredibly dystopian.
Yeah.
The whole like there's like 15,000 people they're gonna burn because they sent out this warning message or whatever. And
horrible.
I mean, like it all just sounds bad news, and they don't keep around the old or whatever, and it's all very utilitarian and very terrible. It brings us back to like Cultural Revolution times, where it was about society as a whole, and the listener specifically makes that argument. He says, we have no chance at individuality here, but humanity, it sounds like they do from the message I received, and I want to be able to protect that, and I thought that was very interesting.
I'm excited now about, hopefully book 2, we learn more about some of the Trisolarans and, is someone going to try to sabotage their efforts to get here?
Yeah. Like
someone on their own side,
Maybe, yeah.
Want to preserve humanity's ability to make art and be individuals and all that.
And so it's here that we start learning about the Sophons, right? And that they actually call them Sophons. 2 or 3 chapters before we've had hints of them, right? Like
protons.
We heard the hydrogen thing.
Yeah.
These are the things that were making the numbers.
The numbers,
right?
there's a whole. It explained it all.
These are the things that were making. Whenever we had that conversation about the pool table, and he was trying to explain like how crazy the pool table situation was. These are the things that were making the pool table.
Because the first place that they sent the Sophons to were the particle smashers.
Right. Because, and the reasoning is, it's going to take us 450 years to get there. And it's taken us 230 iterations of civilization just to get to this point. Humanity has never been reset. And they went from the Stone Age to nanotech in like 10,000 years. So in the next 450 years, the problem is we'll show up and they'll be stronger than us. So we have to limit their scientific abilities. And that was very interesting. It's a good reasoning for sending these things.
It was all very, very clever and it very well thought out. So as you're reading this whole, because it was a lot of explanation of like how they got to the Sophon final form and like why.
Well, I want to talk about some of that too. So.
But it was so interesting to read.
Now, so it takes me several chances to to do it.
I love how angry the Trisolarans got with all these, like,
The
there's
webs.
things in the air.
Well, it takes us back to, there's I can't remember who it is, maybe Wong or somebody has this conversation about like a cigarette filter and how if you unroll the cigarette filter it covers everything, and that's exactly what they did with this proton, right? They unrolled it or whatever to where it surrounded like the entire planet, and they were able to like carve their supercomputer on it or whatever. But the one in particular, so there's the web failure, and then there's the one with the eye
Yeah.
that like tries to kill them, and they say like that was probably an intelligent living thing, and we destroyed it.
Yeah.
But don't sweat it.
No big deal.
We probably destroy micro universes all the time. Yeah.
I mean, every time you spray bleach.
I don't know. Right? Yeah, I guess. So I that was my favorite iteration, was the one with the eye that all comes together, and there's an intelligence back there that is not happy about all this, and I thought that was very cool.
I mean, and also, like, no big deal. We're making intelligent life.
Mm-hmm. Well, they didn't make it. They found it. Like, it was in there.
Yeah.
It was, like, in some other dimension.
Yeah.
And then it was able to
but
make
they've
contact.
tapped into the ability to harness,
Or something.
control, send it forward to do their bidding, and communicate results back.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love it when in the next, I think it's the next chapter or 2 chapters, and they're all like kind of meeting back, and they're like, okay, well, just be aware every conversation that we have now is being listened into, by these Sophons, and everyone for 2 seconds sees your bugs.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so here's what's really interesting, right? So the Sophons can basically be anywhere and everywhere, but they didn't stop Red Coast 2 from being cut. They could have been aware of that conversation and said, like, hey, don't sail through the Panama Canal, right?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't do that. Why? Is that like an oversight on the author's part? Are they cool with Mike Evans being cut up? Were they really only hitting particle accelerators at that point and not stopping off at like other places?
But now they have their attention in this place because of the ship incident.
Well, maybe, but I mean, like, yeah, I guess. But it seems to me that they could have been aware and warned him, and they didn't.
Well, maybe we'll find out in book 2.
Maybe. I don't know. I think it's sketchy. So. But talking about the bugs thing, there's this great line where they said, "But bugs have never been defeated."
Right. Well, and that's from Dasha.
Yeah, we've been killing them forever.
As Ding Yi and Wang Mao were kind of getting a bit nihilistic about this whole thing, like, we're bugs, let's go. Go party it up. Let's do what we want because there's no point in anything anymore. Dasha took him out to the field to show the locust invasion. Yeah. So, like,
and he's right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we had 2 weeks of rain and we're being overtaken by fire ants. Mm-hmm. So,
no matter how many times we've tried.
No matter like what, they just keep moving to different little spots, but they're not being defeated. Let's see. Yeah, I made a note about the countdown and the just that's so cool. So there's 2 Sophons.
Yep.
But they cannot be everywhere all at once.
They can be.
But they can
practically
move
everywhere.
So quick.
They move almost the speed of light.
So the
Earth is so small that you can basically cross it 1,000 times.
But that doesn't mean that they cannot see everything at the same time. Because if they're hanging out with this conversation, they're not hanging out with that one.
But the point is that they're here and in France and here and in France. They're moving so fast that they're basically in 7 places at one time.
Okay.
Right? Because like you would just be going. Like imagine if I went to your office and was like running around the hallways in a circle, but I was running around so fast that I could basically be there at all times.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So there's 2 here, and then they're communicating with 2
the
back
quantum
on.
entangled ones back there. One of my favorite parts about that was where the guy was like, okay, so can we like break it down to 11 dimensions? He was like, that is not in order.
Yeah, and someone's like, I understand.
I thought it was
yeah.
Now, this last chapter is like a fairly small chapter, but it's the end of the book, and it's this like Twilight for humanity kind of situation, right? Like
Sunset
for humanity. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it's the end, and it's all dark from here on out. Like the and it brings us back to like the first chapter when Wang Mao meets that general who says everything we've dealt with up until this point has been easy, and like he's not wrong. There's this existential threat. Our science is capped. We got problems, and so I really enjoyed just kind of like the symbolism there at the end.
Yeah.
So.
It was, and old Ye Wenxi made her way up the mountain and looked out on her sunset and the sunset for humanity.
Yeah.
Is her sunset, is she trying to die right there? What's happening?
No. But I mean, she brought it on.
Yeah.
Might as well.
So somebody commented, I saw it right before we started filming, just some talk about like all kinds of life forms on Earth that have reflective bodies, and just like how that kind of adapts, and because it was just in response to the comment about like what do these guys look like, and he said that in something that he had read, maybe it was from the author, I might be messing this up now, but they might be kind of bug-like looking, and also the size of grains of rice, to like further flip on its head our idea of what life is like on other planets, or underestimating life based on size. In my brain, when I read that they were grains of rice size, and it just and I like revisited everything that I had read that was like Trisolaran End.
Interesting.
Poor little listener 1370 or whatever, and just
as a tiny grain of rice.
just doing the most.
Yeah, it could be. Interesting. Yeah, that'll be exciting to see. It's definitely throwing me off because there is that one reference. There's one reference to them being reflective. One. There are lots of references to them being fibrous, and you don't usually get fibrous things that are reflective. Not here, but you never know. So I'm definitely interested to see how far that goes.
Yeah.
All told, I've really enjoyed this book. I think it can be dense for some people. I've had several people say that they started it in the beginning was just like too intense or too complicated for them.
I recommend the audiobook. It gets you through that.
Yeah. Well, so I've read the whole thing. I did listen to some audiobook to like prepare my notes, but I don't think it's that complicated. There's definitely complicated subjects, and I don't understand.
Right, but you just kind of you just
read it.
You keep going with it. You're like, okay, and then maybe later something else will happen, and you'll kind of be like, that's why they explained that, and that kind of makes sense.
And I, one of my favorite books of all time is actually Wuthering Heights. I really enjoyed Wuthering Heights, and I would probably suggest this book to somebody who likes sci-fi, but I wouldn't primarily suggest it to sci-fi people because I think there's like better sci-fi out there. I would suggest this book to people who just like literature for the memes, right? Like for the things that are in there that you can dig out and find, because like this is rich stuff, and there's so much like gold to be had in thinking about the juxtapositions and the the forest and all these different things that we've talked about. There's so much more there than there is of like sci-fi content, especially in this first book. Can't speak to the next one, but.
So we're done with book 1, and I am very excited about getting into book 2. And so to me, that says I must have really enjoyed what happened here.
Yeah.
But also, what I really appreciate about the way this book is it doesn't feel like it was really just part of a bigger set, and it was just cut off for the sake of becoming a trilogy. I know, and no hate towards the Hunger Games because it was very entertaining. But those didn't need to be 3 separate books. Sure. It could have been one. But it was just divided up to make it easy to dispense and to turn into movies. But this felt...
Yeah.
I could not read books 2 and 3 and be fine.
Right.
Because I know in my mind eventually what's happening. But I've got a really great story about Ye and Wang Mao and Da Shi, and we got to see some cool technology, and we got to learn about Trisolaris.
Right. Well, I mean, it brings us back to this thing about threes, right, that we have in here, right? We have the past, and then, I'm not saying like the present and the future, but there will be 3 I imagine we've got the past. We're going to have something that's like in the 400 years, getting ready for it. And then we'll have like the final battle, I assume. I don't know.
I don't know. I haven't even
But,
looked at how it's.
I have no
divided
idea
up.
how it's going to go, yeah. But it makes sense for it
Yeah.
to be divided into three for that reason. So definitely looking forward to, now that we're really open about what the problem is, how are we going to tackle it? What are they going to do about the Sophons? How do you get around that?
Right.
And then if you can't, how do you get around that? Because it can't be over now, you know.
Right.
So it'll be really interesting to see what happens next.
I'm very excited to see what's coming. Yeah. So, do you have anything else you want to?
No. This is the end of our first book that we've ever done for our little YouTube channel, which, you know, again, I'll say is we're doing this for us. We don't really talk about the book until we start recording it, so we really enjoy sitting down and hearing each other's thoughts. We're glad that you are watching it with us. We think that's really great. We hope you subscribe and keep watching more, and more than anything, we hope that you comment below the things that you think about this, because we have really enjoyed interacting with people about the things that they think about, without any spoilers, if you can help it at all for us.
And we do appreciate y'all have been so careful about spoilers, especially some of you who have already read the whole series. You kind of type like, okay, well, just wait for this, but I'm scared to say anything because I don't want to ruin it. So just come check back in on us if you're not following along, and follow up on your comments, because we want to know.
Well, and if somehow you're someone who has made it to the end of this episode to hear this message, and you don't like this book, and you don't want to read the next one, that's cool, that's fine.
Yeah.
We are going to read something different in the future, and it's not always going to be sci-fi. I don't think after we finish this series, our next reading will be sci-fi.
No way.
And whatever we do next is not going to be a series. We're reading one book. Even if it's a book in a series, we're reading one book.
Yeah.
And then we'll move on from there.
Yeah, so just make sure, you know, if you want like a reminder that we're still doing stuff, if you have the notifications turned on, you'll see when we post the next syllabus, and you'll see what book it is and decide if you want to come back.
And we are absolutely willing to take book recommendations of any kind.
Yeah, please.
We want to stay in fiction, or at least historical fiction,
Yeah.
right? We don't want nonfiction if we can help it.
Not that we don't read nonfiction,
Right.
We just don't feel like there's that much to discuss about
Right.
it.
And we're always looking forward to things, but we're going to read what we want to read ultimately. And so we're not as excited as I am about finishing this series. I'm excited about finding out what we're reading next.
I know, yeah, we haven't even really,
Haven't
we've
really
like
talked
thrown some
about it.
ideas out there, but neither of us have committed to anything. So yeah, now's the time to start getting some some picks in there.
Well, thank you for making it to the end of this book with us. We appreciate you being here, and we will see you sometime later this week for our syllabus episode for the second book, which I don't even know.
It's called The Dark Forest.
The Dark Forest. See you then.